And we're back! If you've been watching the whole series this far, I congratulate you on your intestinal fortitude. Now you're in for a special treat, which is the amazing and incredibly well thought out end of Wizards and Warriors 3. Over here on the right is the final gatekeeper for the entire game. The only reason I'm taking the time to actually kick the crap out of him was just to put him at peace with his brothers. Otherwise he could just use the levitation staff and float over him without any problems whatsoever. Over here on top of this tower is the start of the last major quest for the game, and that's finding the hidden crown jewels. Each one is in the possession of a princess that's locked away in some secret room. If you refuse to marry the princess, you get stuck in the endless loop of "Dost thou love me? But thou must," ripped off straight from Dragon Warrior. Think with the fate of the kingdom hanging in the balance, they would just hand over the gems to you, but nah, they gotta think of their kids and their biological clocks first. You know, I don't know what's worse, the fact that a princess will practically blackmail you into agreeing to marrying her, or that the crown jewel's worth less than a coin that you find in a box lying in the middle of a random dungeon. Now you need to go back to town, so nothing else to do but take the express elevator back to the ground floor. Fortunately for Kuros, he can only take a maximum of 1 point of damage from falling from an incredible height. It's like, go figure, a bat in the middle of the Earth Realm can knock you out in one hit, but a fall from the height of the Empire State Building and he's barely got a scratch on him. We're just going to hop in here to pick up a little bit of free food. Not that we really need it, we got plenty of gold in case we ever want to run to a shop, but hey, every little bit helps. And this window over here is where we find the second princess locked up, so yeah, you could have gotten this crown jewel very early on in the game. You can pretty much see where this is going, with one guy agreeing to marry 3 different princesses. You know, this is a perfect recipe for an episode of The Murray Show. The question is, when he pulls out the envelope and says, "You are the father," what does Kuros do? Does he just morph into one of his costumes? Just pick up and run like all hell, like most of the other guests do. We gotta head back into the sewers now, but it's time for a little bit of payback. Now that we have the silver sword, we can easily take down Santa's little reject. Just gotta stand in the corner here and make sure that you shoot up at an angle to keep him from landing on you, and then throw in a couple horizontal shots for good measure. Certainly a lot easier than trying to beat him with just the standard longsword, or even something like the fireball staff, to which he's immune. There's only one area of this dungeon that we haven't been to, and obviously that's the one that contains the locked up princess and the final guardian, so that's where we're off to. The fastest way over is really just to fall all the way to the bottom and then switch to one of the thief costumes and run through the secret passages. This door here leads to the final area of the game, but we don't have the third crown jewel yet, so we're going to head upward instead. Well, the thief's already got his tender love, and so let's make sure the wizard doesn't feel too left out. And to think, if King James got rid of the crown jewels and instead just opened up a couple boxes, his kingdom would be in a lot better shape. Now as you'll see over here, there are 4 indentations for gems, so we only have 3 in our inventory. Fourth one is actually located at the very top of this room here. it's not as easy as just walking up to a princess and agreeing to marry her. We have another boss fight to get to. At about this point, auto-scroll takes over and lands you gently on one of these floating platforms. We have to fight off this massive three-headed dragon using the silver sword. Now this fight right here is all the makings of a really good boss fight, but unfortunately suffers from one fatal flaw in the game's engine. See, the way the game is designed, the order of events is that you fall to the ground, get stunned, and then you lose a point of life. And if you watch Kuros anytime that he gets hit in midair, you'll see that he doesn't actually lose the life until he hits the ground. While you're standing on these platforms, the game considers Kuros to be in midair. You can tell that because when you try hitting down the controller, Kuros doesn't duck, except when you're holding down the sword button. So considering that the game sees Kuros in midair throughout this entire battle, it really doesn't matter much that you get hit by the dragon's fireballs at any point. Sure, you get knocked back a couple of pixels, but you're really only in danger if you actually fall off the platforms and fall off the bottom of the screen. Only at that point, when you hit the ground below, will it actually register a hit, and even then you only lose 1 point of life. So the worst that happens is you float all the way back up to the top and have to start the whole fight all over again. So as long as you keep yourself centered on one of the platforms, you're practically immortal throughout the entire fight. Thus rendering what could have been a very good and very nerve-wracking boss fight into nothing more than a meaningless waste of time. This is one section of the game that really could have stood to have a little bit of extra testing from Rare before the actual release date. Now that the Ridley wannabe is dead, we just hop harmlessly all the way back down to the bottom and pick up the last of the royal gems, which surprisingly is worth more than all the other three put together. Guess being held by the dragon gave it a little bit more intrinsic value in the eyes of the people around you. Once you place all 4 gems in the holders here, you can't go back to any of the previous areas, so before you do this, if you're really low on life, you want to go back and stock up on some food, but there's still going to be plenty for us to find in the next area. Once you pass through the portcullis, you can't go back. In fact, you can stand here and hit up on the door all day, it just keeps teleporting you back to this green cavern here. This part of the game was just thrown in entirely for shits and giggles by the developers. It's an upward climb through every single area of the game. There's no enemies and no dangers to speak of whatsoever. In fact, there's really even no point to all the treasures that they stack this area with, because it's not like you can run back to the shop and buy anything at this point. All it really is just one last minute ready grab in order to jack up your score towards the end of the game for that high score list. Like I said, we're going to be going through every single area of this game. All the layers of the underworld, a couple of the town buildings, and even up through the castle. I suppose the developers of this game got paid by the hour or by the screen, so that's the only reason why I can imagine they stuck in this whole bonus area here. I really hope that whatever suspenseful end that they're building up to with all this upward travel is worth it, but knowing that it's Wizards and Warriors, it's probably not going to, so don't be disappointed. This secret passage to the castle is brought to you by Frobozz Electric. Frobozz Electric, we bring bad things to light. At this point, throwing in all these money bags is just giving the middle finger to anybody who had to go and scrounge for money for keys early on in the game. There's not even any traps in this entire upward climb, so you'd think that Malco actually wanted us to make it all the way to the castle so they can take care of us. It would have been a lot easier if you just left the front gate open and hung a big sign that said, "Come on in, Kuros, we got cake and party favors for you." You have to ask yourself first and foremost exactly how far up in the sky is the castle to begin with. And secondly, who in their right mind would put a castle up on 5-mile-high stones? That's just asking for an accident to happen. Personally, if I were Kuros, I would have let Malco have this entire town to himself. I would have gone off and partied in the rest of the world. Finally, we're at the very top, and over here is the good King James, who's all tied up. You'd think that considering how badly he messed up the architectural design of this entire town, they'd be just a little bit more grateful that we freed him. But onward to the big fight with Malco. Oh, come on, this play, haven't we seen this thing used like 100,000 times before? You know, honestly, if you're stupid enough to say yes at this point, then you deserve exactly what's coming to you. And here you've got what's famously referred to as the bondage ending of Wizards and Warriors 3. You'll get this ending any time you lose all your lives, not just when you get blown up by Malco. And of course, what evil ending wouldn't be complete without a scene of the evil madman reigning over the entire kingdom and wiggling his eyebrows like a pervert. But you know what? We're not that stupid. And here we are, folks, the final fight with Malco. The game developers went out of their way to make this fight obscenely tough. For the first stage of this fight, Malco flies just across the top of the screen, shooting a pattern of fireballs every time he reaches about the halfway point. These fireballs can be incredibly tough to dodge. What you have to do is wait for him to fire the first one, and then run towards the side that he just came from, and most of the time they should pass harmlessly over your head, but not always. What really makes things even more difficult is the fact that you have to be standing still in order to fire stuff from your sword. It's not like Iron Sword where you can be shooting things while you're moving around. You have to turn Kuros into a turret, or at least a cordless infield, in order to be able to get off a couple of shots. Given the patterns of the fireballs and how fast they move, it just makes things unnecessarily tough for this point in the game. Of course, combine it with the fact that every single one of your hits only takes off half a bar of his life, and yet every time he hits you it takes off a full bar, and well, you see you've got your work cut out for you. Once you get him down to half life, then he goes to a second pattern. Well, now he's going to swoop down to your position at every swing. Then on the upswing, he's going to release a fireball that bounces across the ground right at you. You can destroy the fireballs by swinging your sword at them. However, just the fact that he's constantly swooping in at you just makes things incredibly tough at this point. Your best bet is really just to walk right underneath him and start shooting upward. You'll be able to hit him a couple of times, and on top of it, he's not going to dodge directly at you if you're standing right below him. By the way, did I mention that you have to defeat Malco entirely in one go? If you lose all your health at any point during the fight, you have to start all the way back from the beginning. Combined with the fact that you only have 3 lives and that there's no continue system and no password system, this is your only chance of beating the game. If you lose to Malco entirely, you have to start all the way back over from the beginning, and that's 3 hours of your life that you'd like to get back from Rare. It also doesn't help that those few times that you do need to shoot upward at an angle, the control scheme just really doesn't like to pick it up, and it's just going to make you shoot horizontally or vertically. My biggest complaint about Malco is not the difficulty about him, but the sprites that they use for him. I mean, take a look at the way he's drawn, especially when he's doing the seated on the throne throwing fireballs at you from the earlier scene. I mean, it looks like he was drawn completely by a 6-year-old. He has by far the worst art that's been used anywhere throughout this game. Malco may almost be dead, but he is saving the very best for last. Now he's just going to disappear in a puff of smoke and reappear in random spots on the screen, shooting very quick streams of fireballs at you. Again, take a look at the sprite that they're using for him and tell me that's not a complete and utter joke the way that he's drawn. At this point, your best weapon is prayer and not much else. The ending that you see here quite literally makes absolutely no sense. This is probably the closest you'll ever get to taking an LSD trip without actually taking the stuff yourself. It's not bad enough that we're subjected to scenery like this, we also get to be the subject of the same boring battle music that we've been hearing for the last 3 minutes throughout the boss fight. We're now going to see a whole bunch of dates flash by the screen, which I guess implies that Kuros is going to be traveling through time fighting Malkill wherever he pops up. My advice for Malkill, just stand in the middle of a wide open field with absolutely nothing around to jump on. Kuros will be so surprised by the scenery, he'll have absolutely no idea what to do and he'll be easy pickings. And seeing how many people are willing to help out Kuros for meaningless gold trinkets, I would gather all the gold and silver in the kingdom, order it melted down and form into one giant gold schlong and see who'd actually be willing to help him out for something like that. I gotta believe that Malkill has an insurance policy that guarantees them huge, colossal payouts for large and abysmally bad failures. That's the only reason I can explain him actually traveling through time to want to do this all over again. Though I suppose in terms of small victories, Kuros did manage to find a way to get out of marrying 3 princesses in one wedding. If I were King James, I'd order my entire city torn down and rebuilt with no building being taller than 1 story. I'd also ban the use of stilts, stairs, ladders, or anything else vertical in my entire city. Well, thank you everybody for watching this Let's Play of Wizards and Warriors 3 Kuros Visions of Power for the NES. I'm No Lady Bob, and I'll catch you next time as I continue to do playthroughs of some of the worst video games that have ever been made.
Never forget who is the boss of you. Me! I am the boss of you! I am the boss of you! I am the boss of you!